Ovoviviparous. Ovobibi. Ovoviviparous. Ovoviviparous. And for example, sharks. Holy fuck. Ecosystems are broadly classified into either aquatic or terrestrial, and both have their own unique set of challenges. If you live in water, you mainly have to deal with salinity, the current, the fact that it's always wet, the buoyant forces acting upon you, as well as visibility. Havasi nagos? Wait lang, lutang ako eh. Walang makita. If you live on land, there's no more buoyant force supporting your body, so you have to contend with gravity. It's dry, it's hot, and you're surrounded by air instead of water, which increases your chances of drying up. Gravity! Tuyo na naman! Forever na lang! I'm sick of heat! As we've learned from before, vertebrates more or less go through the same developmental stages. However, how they package their babies is very much tied to their evolutionary history, which in a nutshell is a series of transitions from life on water to life on land. Vertebrate babies are packaged in two main ways: anamniote or amniote. Anamniote eggs consist mostly of the embryo, a bit of lunch, and all of that is surrounded maybe by a jelly coat or some thin chorion layer to provide a somewhat stable environment for the baby to grow. It's therefore no surprise that these types of eggs are laid by the vertebrate groups that either live in or are always in close association with water. Luckily, most of the Earth's surface is covered with the stuff. When you venture out on land, sometimes finding water can be a bit difficult. So when you decide to take the baby out of the water, you gotta find a way to bring the water to the baby. Amniote eggs therefore have had to make substantial renovations to that crib. Enter the extra-embryonic membranes. The most primitive extra-embryonic membrane is the yolk sac. In layman speak, your lunchbox. Even amniote babies get a yolk sac. It's like default. VIPs, however, get an additional 3 extra-embryonic membranes to make sure their babies get top-notch comfort wherever they end up. You don't know what VIP is? Vutiki.
Hindi, wow.
Ibon padede. Yeah, mammals, nagpapadede.
Stop it. Get some help.
The amnion is the extra-embryonic membrane that encloses the baby in its own fluid-filled bubble to ensure that it doesn't dry up. It is this structure, specifically, after which the clades amniota and anamniota are named. The chorion not only makes for incredible wall reinforcement, it's the baby's window to its surrounding environment, making sure that the baby always has a steady supply of fresh air. It also encloses chorionic fluid together with the amniotic fluid. Both serve as shock absorbers in case the baby gets tossed and kicked around.
We got a runner! No!
The allantois is also a ventilation membrane, and the space that it encloses eventually becomes the baby's toilet. This layer often expands to come in contact with the chorion, and together they form the chorioallantoic membrane, again to serve as a window to fresh air and or nutrients. In some animals, it is the yolk sac that comes into contact with the chorion, and together they form the choriovidalin membrane. These extra-embryonic membranes are still derived from the 3 main germ layers of the embryo itself. They sort of extend out of the embryo and then ultimately engulf it. So it's like you use flaps of your own self to wrap yourself around yourself. But not all amniotes leave their eggs out in the dry open. Mammals are in fact the most popular group of animals who decided to keep their babies close. Really close. The same extra-embryonic membranes are in place, but they decided to toss the shell out and replace it with a mobile, responsive, badass enclosure. The mother! The main difference is that the chorion and the chorioallantoic or choriovidalin membranes come in contact directly with the mother's tissues. This mother-baby tissue interface is now what we call the placenta. Placentas can either be chorioallantoic or choriovidalin placentas depending on which extra-embryonic membrane serves as the main conduit for nutrient and gas exchange. We've dealt with the packaging. Now it's time for delivery options. Oviparous vertebrates are egg-laying, so birds and agnathans, or the jawless fish, are the only group of vertebrates whose members are all egg-laying. Viviparous vertebrates are those that give birth to live young. There are what we call euviviparous animals whose babies require nourishment directly from the mom. Now some are what we call ovoviviparous. It's a mouthful. In that the babies are being carried around by the mother, but don't really rely on her directly for nourishment or for gas exchange or for waste disposal. So the mother simply lets the eggs hatch inside her body. Sharks are perhaps some of the best known vertebrate examples to exhibit all three birthing modes, which tells us that birthing strategies aren't really exclusive to a particular clade. So let's try to figure out the pros and cons of egg laying or just keeping it inside your body. If you lay eggs, they are subject to predation, temperature fluctuations, natural calamities, accidental breakages, to name a few. But this also means that the mother can resume her day-to-day activities without being encumbered by a heavy baby. If you keep your eggs within you, the environment of the baby is definitely more stable and it's better protected by the mom. But you can't really have more until you've kicked out the baby. Plus, quite literally, having the baby inside drains the mother of energy and nutrients. This is a very energy intensive process. But despite the long wait, you are rewarded with a baby that will most likely survive to reproductive maturity. And that seems like a better deal, right? A guarantee over a gamble. But if you're a bird, for example, it makes no sense to optimize your anatomy for flight only to be weighed down by your baby if you keep it inside you. So that's why they have to lay the eggs, because otherwise they can't fly. We not only have to think about the baby's best interest, but the parents too. Now, this discussion can easily snowball into behavioral reproductive strategies as a way to compensate for the limitations of structural adaptations. But that's beyond our jurisdiction. For now, what I'd invite you to do is to try and compare the different groups of vertebrates and think about how each step of their development ensures their optimal survival. You might notice that there will be plenty of exceptions to the general trends. And that's just what nature is all about. Whatever works for the life you live, go for it. But you just have to pick your poison. And that is it for today. I hope you learned a little bit about the different birthing strategies of vertebrates. Whether or not you choose to release your baby out into the world or keep it inside you, there is always a trade-off. And that choice will very much depend on the entire life history of the organism, their habitat, where they evolved, how they behave, and a lot of things. One small part of their life history isn't really going to tell us much. As we study the next organ systems, we'll slowly put together the bigger picture and see that, aha, this is what this organism is about. As always, if you'd like to learn more, I will leave you with a few more resources that you can check out to expand your knowledge on vertebrates, reproduction, extra-embryonic membranes, reproductive strategies. I'll see you next time for Integument.